Thank you, sir. And a very good afternoon, my respected teachers and all of my colleagues. Today I am here to talk to you about the introduction of cultures in language teachings. In today's presentation, I'm hoping to cover 3 points. Firstly, what is culture? And then we will look at the relationship of language and culture. And finally, I will present about the role of culture in foreign language teachings. Firstly, what is culture? The word culture is frequently used not only language teacher but also anthropologists and scholar. But in 1992, Nimni and 1993, they said that this is not an easy question to answer, particularly in an increasingly international world. And then Kropa and Klukum found over 300 definitions of culture in their studies, which underline the difficulty and scope of the issue involved in communication and teaching about culture. So, the word culture, everyone feels comfortable using of this term of culture pretty much, but how can we define it? When you start thinking about the culture, firstly you realize that the culture is nearly influence everything in human experience. And then the anthropologist John H. Hotley said what people define the culture as what people think, make, and do. The term of culture is extremely vast and it is one of the most complex words in English also. And there will be a different perspective of view to look at the concept of culture. So in 2014, Frank developed the 3P model of culture, and the 3P are perspective, practice, and products. When we look at our own culture or different culture, it gets easily and more clearly he developed that model. So perspective is defined as what member of the particular culture think, feel, and value. So for example, what is important in their life and what the people of the particular culture consider which behavior is appropriate or inappropriate. And then practice. Perspective shape practice. So in practice include the idea about traditions and the particular behavior of the culture. And then the pattern of communication. So in pattern of communication is may differ from one culture to another culture in terms of language. But not only that one, and also when we talk about some things, also what we talk about to whom and the using of eye contact, the using of gesture, what we use in the communications like that, and not only that one, not only the other behavior also include in the practice. For example, formal behavior like the wedding ceremony tradition, and informal behavior like how people dress or how people eat on a day-to-day basis. And the final one is product. So there are a lot of cultural products in each and every society. So, but the food is the first cultural product when we study other culture or when we encounter other culture. For example, when we talk about Korea, so firstly we saw like kimchi or soju like that. So when we talk about the Japanese culture, firstly we saw the sushi like that. So, but not only that one, there are a lot of cultural products like literature and then music and or clothing, like that. There are a lot of cultural products in each and every society. And then in 1976, Edward G. Hall developed the cultural Einspot analogy. So it helped to the students when we look at the other culture. So it will help to the student as a tool to more clear when we study the other culture. And the tip of the Einspot culture, it belongs to the visible culture is like food, clothing, and language, literature, art, music, and then not only the one tradition or festival. And then in the lower part of the Einspot is referred to the deep culture. It refers to the attitudes of the particular members of the particular culture, and then their belief, and then the patterns of communication, like that. It refers to the deep culture. And then in 1988, the casting categorized the culture into categorized big C and small c. So big C also refers to the visible form of formal culture. It will be the literature and the fine art and intellectual products of the particular culture. And then the small c is referred to the invisible type or deep culture of the particular societies. And then the second part of my presentation is the interrelationship of language and culture. Of course, it is undeniable fact that there is the link between language and culture. So in 1994, Brown stated that a language is a part of culture and a culture is a part of language. So the two are intricately interwoven, so that one cannot separate the two without losing the significance of either language or culture. In 2000, Jian described the interrelation of language and culture metaphorically from three different perspectives. The first perspective is from the philosophical views. In here, language and culture create a living organism. So, without culture, language would be died, and without language, culture would be shapeless. And then the second perspective from a communicative views. In here, if communication is a swimming, language is swimming skill, and culture is water. So without language, communication would remain the very limited degree, and then without culture, the communication would be there would be no communication at all. The final view is from pragmatic views. In here, communication like transportations, and then language is like vehicle, and culture like traffic light. So language make communication more faster and easier, and then culture regulates, sometimes promote, and sometimes hinder the communications. And then the last part of the presentation, the last part of this presentation is the role of culture in foreign language teachings. The issue of integrating culture in language teaching is still a hot debate among teachers, educators, and scholars. But now, in EFL field, the place of culture has been reconsidered in the language classroom. So in CEFL framework, the language learning is no longer defined in terms of communicative competence, but rather in terms of intercultural competence. Not only UK framework, in US also, the US standard by ACTF published the standards of foreign language learning, preparation for the 21st centuries. And then it also consists of 5 C's, and the 5 C's are communication, culture, connections, comparison, and communities. So therefore, in 1993, the Bennett claimed that in language classroom, the teachers are encouraged to teach target culture to their students along with language teaching because to prevent the educating the fluent fool. So the terms of fluent fool was introduced by the Bennett, and it means someone who speaks a foreign language well, but the students doesn't understand the social or philosophical content of that language. So it's time for conclusion. The learning culture will be difficult to address in the language classroom. But according to the Krishna 1999, she said that the simple mystery of the linguistic form of a language is not enough for learner to be considered competence in the target language. So the student will not be considered to have a master in the foreign language until they understand the context of not only target culture but also our own culture as well. And then with the rise of globalization, the world became more interconnected. So the language teacher needs to activate the students' cultural antenna to understand not only other culture but also our own culture as well. So even if the student may go or may not go to abroad, so when they communicate with other people from other culture, so they will communicate effectively and successfully, avoiding cultural conflict, cultural shock, and misunderstandings. Thank you.
Okay.